helping organizations design best practices on the cloud, best practice architectures. I recently kind of pivoted or moved and focused a lot more into AI and data specifically. What are the implications of data and AI when organizations are looking to migrate, modernize, transform, innovate using those technologies? I was at Google recently leading the conversational AI and then data space there, and now I'm at Microsoft. But yeah, that's a bit about myself, and I'm really excited to take part in this conversation.
Thank you so much. Rocky, hi.
Yeah, hello everyone. Pleasure to be here. Rocky Giglio, I'm the Global Director of Security Go-to-Market and Solutions for SADA. And SADA is a cloud-first company, so it's a little bit of a different feel for me. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Started out in enterprise consulting 26 years ago. So my focus primarily in the security space has been on the operations and the architecture side. So I spent a lot of my career helping customers all over the globe design their data center architecture. And now, over the last 15 or so, it's been more focused on cloud, built the Microsoft business for several partners all up and down the East Coast of the United States, and then worked on Amazon and cloud, and then finally digital transformation for some global GSIs. So yeah, been all over the space, but it is neat to see, as Alan was pointing out, the transition now as we see companies going cloud first. That really is the move that we need to take in order to even maintain security. We'll talk about that some more today, I'm sure, but excited to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Paolo, hi.
Hi, Moran. Thank you very much for inviting me to this great panel. It's really an honor. And I want to say hello to all the audience out there as well. I'm Paolo Delinglato. I'm the Chief Channel Business for Jolera. Jolera, what we do is we develop fixed costs as a service solutions in cybersecurity, backup, cloud, and managed help desk. Before this role, I was a high-tech journalist at Computer Dealer News magazine, and I wrote a lot of articles about cybersecurity. But I'm here. I'm sort of the outlier here. I'm the non-technical person. I'm the go-to-market person. So happy to join you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to divide today's event into 3 topics: market and technology overview, challenges and risks, and solutions and approaches. Our first topic is a brief overview of the market and technologies. Ido, what is cloud migration and how do you migrate to the cloud?
So cloud migration is a process of relocating organizational data. It could be applications, services, workloads to a cloud infrastructure. It means that you move cloud, let's say computing assets from on-premises to the largest hyperscalers or cloud service provider. It could be you move to application, move some of your applications to Amazon, to Google Cloud, to Microsoft Azure. And sometimes you can move computing assets from Azure to Amazon. So this process called cloud migration. And most enterprises today, they use at least 2 cloud service providers. And in a few years from now, they will cloud service providers at the same time, because they want to shift workloads from one cloud to another, and they want to use the best-in-class cloud native technologies. So in some workloads, let's say AI, big data and analytics, they will use Google Cloud. And for, let's say, Microsoft containers or Microsoft workloads, they will use Microsoft Azure. And for other workloads, they will use Amazon Cloud. And if they will get cheaper price, they want to move their workloads to another CSP cloud service provider. So they want to have those agilities. They want to have multi-cloud. They want to build their architecture multi-cloud strategy. And the steps of migration, it's a long step. I will try to squeeze it to 4 steps. First of all, you need to define your business goals, what you're trying to achieve. What are you hoping to achieve by migrating your workloads to the largest hyperscalers? It could be sometimes increase security. You can improve stability, or let's say you have an application and you want to scale your application if you have a website. So it depends on the customer requirements, on their goals. And it could be sometimes you have a lots of data and you want to do an analytics or to analyze your data. So it's easier to do it in the public cloud. They have bunch of cloud native, great services, cloud applications, so they can help you to do that. They can help you also with this transition. So the second phase is the assessment. So the assessment is another phase. You need to actually take everything that you have on premises, try to assess everything, and try to analyze what you have. It's like a sort of mapping, and which application, which workload will be more suitable to move first to the cloud. Because if you have a large application, very complex application, let's say you have an application that will use multiple and other systems, so it's less suitable to the cloud. So if you start your journey by developing a new cloud native application, start to move them, start to move non-business critical workloads or applications that are not very critical to your business. And if they are so simple, try to move them first and then move the largest application that you have. But before you move your largest application, your monolith applications, you should start to break them to microservices and use the benefits of the cloud native technologies. And the third step is a cloud migration strategy that you should build. Both Amazon, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure, they support multiple cloud migration. They support six of the cloud migration, but the most common of them, lift and shift, rehost, and replatforming. And they have great cloud native services to help you with this transition to move your application to their cloud. And let's say that the first phase, it's the migration phase, that you should build a plan, a rigorous cloud migration plan, and choose which migration tool should I use for each workload or for each application, because you have a lot of things. I think Amazon acquired a great company, startup company that's called Cloud Endure. So basically you can install an agent and you can move your application from your data center, from Microsoft Azure, from Google Cloud to Amazon. And Azure has great services as well, migration tools. So you can take a virtual machine and you can actually move it as is to Azure. So basically it's much easier to work with cloud native tools, with cloud native technology in order to migrate your workloads to the cloud. So this is my answer.
Thank you. Paolo, are there any reasons for cloud migration? Do you think the trend of moving everything to the public cloud is over? Is that a reason for cloud migration?
Well, no, I don't think it's over, but it's interesting you bring that up, because a few weeks ago I was speaking with a top Microsoft executive on the Azure team, and he told me something quite interesting about Microsoft's strategy and how it's evolved over the years. So roughly around 5 years ago, the strategy was, like you said, Moran, put everything in the cloud, public cloud. And so why was that? Well, the reason predominantly is a reduction in cost, right? So that's the type of strategy that was in play back there. And it's certainly played out throughout the years. But today, he was telling me that the strategy has evolved into a more innovation one across hybrid, on-prem. And I found that very, very interesting, because I think to myself, why is Microsoft all of a sudden publicly making this push, right, to innovation over reduction in cost, right? So you have to think about, like, why is this in play, right? So he feels, this is the Microsoft executive saying, and I would agree with him on this, that the innovation discussion has to happen because of one basic key critical focal point, and that is, how do you unify the cloud all the way to the intelligent edge of the computing layer? So he told me that there's a lot of growth happening in this marketplace, specifically on the intelligent edge, with such things as new devices, new technology solutions. So what are some of those solution examples? Well, there's autonomous cars, but not just what we see in public, but more along like in trucking, right? Because in trucking, it makes sense, right, to have a business discussion over that, because you have to pay these people to drive the car, right? And the other day, And I know this is going right on the extreme. But the other day I saw an example of a flying car, right? And it flew for 35 minutes with 2 people on board, right? Not my cup of tea, but it was kind of rudimentary. I don't know if you guys saw that or anything, but this is the point that he's trying to make, right? Of going to that innovation layer, because it has to be unified on those intelligent devices. These are intelligent devices, right? So I think the innovation message is an important one moving forward.
Thank you, Paolo. Rocky, we are fast approaching the point where almost all businesses use the cloud in some major portion of their infrastructure. How far along are you in this journey?
Well, so it's an interesting question for me because we are a cloud first company. So SADA as an organization was a Google all-in Google partner, is an all-in Google partner, and we've really building an ecosystem around that. So my role is actually relatively new to SADA as an organization, focused on integrating security into that whole story. So for us, we're cloud first, always have been, right? So that's an easy answer for us as an organization. But what we're seeing in our customer base is that most of them are, they're there, right? They're using cloud first in a lot of ways, or the ones who will tell you, no, we're not there, and we don't think we're going to be there. You do some, if you do a security assessment of their traffic, their internet traffic, you'll see right away they've got hundreds of cloud services that are being used by the folks in their organizations. And so they're in the cloud, whether they like it or not, which can be a fun discussion, right? Because now we've got to wrap around that and help put a strategy in place. So I do think a lot of our customers, and on the whole, I think most people want to get there, kind of to the points of, Ido and Paolo, and like innovation is necessary. You've got to have a business justification for it. There's cost reductions, there's efficiencies to be gained. So, as an organization, that's where we live. So it's easy for me to say, yeah, we're all in. But I recognize that, legacy architectures and whatnot, it's not so simple to just say, yeah, we're going to just lift and shift everything out there. But as Ido pointed out, there's a lot of offerings and solutions out there to make that path easier. And hopefully we'll continue to see that trend. Even the relative ease that AI can add to that, right? Starting to see that technology trend where AI is being leveraged to help re-platform applications into the cloud. So there's a ton there. I know that's an easy answer for me to say, yeah, I'm cloud first because we are a cloud first company. But there's a lot of movement there, I think, in the customers that we're serving. So.
Thank you, Rocky. Would any other panelists want to add or tell from their personal experience?
I would love to hear Amar's view of the cloud in the sense that the data and AI-centric solutions. I think.
Yeah. No, of course. No, I think. Look, I think we're pretty much in the second or third phase. In where we are at the moment. There is migration is, doing cloud or thinking about cloud is almost like a known, right? It's a natural thing to be doing. Everybody is looking at doing, despite there being some outliers and some challenges there. But I think the next stage for me anyway is to how do you then take advantage of modernization and then innovation in the cloud, right? Those are the things that open up once you've done the migration. I think, companies need to have a long-term view in terms of where do they want to go? What's the long-term plan? And I think it's important to have that built up from the start rather than, kind of planning as you go. So that's very important. I think the second thing that's really important is avoiding the trap of not doing what you've been doing on premise and doing it in the cloud, because that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen a lot of customers do, is that it's just like for like lift and shift. And ultimately what that's going to do is actually end up costing you more than what you were paying for on premise. So these things, again, back to basics, you're going to make sure that you've got them right, because I've seen those happen in a very wrong way. And I think making sure that you bring everybody on the journey, because the migration or looking at cloud is not just a technology discussion. It's a fundamental cultural shift in how you manage, how you do technology, how you how you govern it, how you look at it. It's actually a big cultural shift that you have to pivot and make. So I think, those are some of the key lessons that I've learned over my experience. I mean, there's so many cases where you've heard where, because one of the regions has gone offline or because something has happened and organizations have lost their whole booking systems, or nobody can book an appointment or nobody can do something. It's because things have not been designed properly when the moves happened and they've missed out on a lot of those best practices that you need to have in place. So yeah, those are some of my comments, Alan, I think, in terms of what I've learned and lessons in my experience.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Yes, can I add something?
Of course. Yeah.
So if business want to stay competitive these days, he must use the cloud, because the cloud looks different than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Amazon was the pioneer. They started to run servers 15, 20 years ago. And then it was all lift and shift. They ran servers, they ran compute, they ran storage in the cloud. And then we had the PaaS platform, PaaS services, and then now we have SaaS services. And today we see enterprises that they want to move almost everything to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Because in the cloud, they can add AI capabilities. They want to use machine learning models. They want to build a data lake. And it's much easier to them to do those things in the cloud. So every customers that we have today, they want to build their own landing zone. They want to move all their data to build data lake, and they have thousands of devices that they want to connect them to the internet, to the public clouds, because they have multiple cloud native services and cloud native tools to manage those devices. I'm talking about IoT, for example. So it's super important for every company that they want to grow their businesses. Cloud, it's super essential, and they should move many workloads, many as they can, to the public cloud, to the largest hyperscalers, and they will increase their innovation immediately.
And of course, the use of, as you said, the use of multi-cloud for different
purposes. They must use multi-cloud, because for each workload, you can find another use case, or you can find, if you want to use the best-in-class cloud-native technologies, let's say Microsoft Azure, they have proprietary services like Cosmos DB. It's an amazing service, and that you can use. And other have multiple other pros and cons. Each cloud there has its own pros and cons, and the customers can choose. I want this service from this cloud service provider. I want that service, big data service from Google Cloud, and for other from Amazon. And you can choose what you would like. Let's say also cost is very important for every customer, for every enterprise. So some of the customers can get better on Amazon, and they move everything to Amazon. And Microsoft can offer them a better deal on their cloud. So he wants to move every application that he has to Microsoft Azure. So the customers want the agility to move on each cloud that they want, because they have different types of advantages for each one of them. And sometimes they get better prices.
Amar, you're raising your hand. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, no, I think also, just to building on Edo's point, you've got to step a little bit back and understand what's happening in the market around why they need to look at cloud. I think, and the reason for that is actually because the speed of innovation and speed of change, right? If you look at the way the market is moving and how technology is developing and how things are moving, if you don't innovate and if you don't look at other avenues of pivoting your business and transforming, you're going to be left behind as a business. Now, if you look at how businesses have performed over the last, century or so, the speed of change was not as fast. Now the speed of change is very fast. So if you stop innovating and if you stop moving, you're going to be left behind very, very quickly. And this is also a reason why you need to look at a more agile, more nimble type of platform to look at how you can do that. And then this is where this is why you need to get to a stage, and it's a journey. You don't expect people to just be switching on the button like that. It takes time and it's a journey. But ultimately, what you'll get to the end of that, or what your vision should be, is what could we be doing as a business to capture what the customer wants or what the customer needs even, right? And then to make sure that we have a capability or a platform, which what the cloud can provide, using data and AI to basically personalize and give the consumer what the consumer wants and needs, right? That's a really fundamental piece. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
No, that was a great comment. Thank you so much. Alan, you're raising your hand.
I think Paolo.
I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't want to interject to what Amar said, because it also goes to internal teams as well. It's not just what's out publicly. And I think a lot of businesses fail to realize that the innovation port could be a way to even increase profit, right, by going to the cloud thing. One of the great examples, and this is a very funny one, I'm just going to set it out for everyone, is with Revlon. So the CIO of Revlon, when I spoke to him a couple of years ago, was battling with shadow IT, right? Because, you know, all these groups, right, they're just going out into the cloud and getting whatever services they want because they need to get to market quicker. And then he realized if he had a harmonious like view of the cloud, then the nail polish department could collaborate with the lipstick department on new colors and create new products that could, you know, supersede any of the costs that were involved in sort of migrating to the cloud. So internally, I think also too, I think a lot of these companies should look at that as well.
Rocky?
Yeah, I just want to add to that, and you know, I think that's the essential ingredient, right? Is it's the innovation and the business value, right? Cloud is essential because of those two things. Just 10 years ago, I was talking to customers about building data lakes, and at that time, the mindset was we're going to do this on-prem in our data center, and the cost of doing that was so prohibitive, right? That they started to make that transition into, well, there is this thing called Amazon. Maybe we should go there, right? And then it's, well, then what about Azure and what about GCP? And now GCP, I mean, they came to market with BigQuery, which was this giant data lake that allowed, just really revolutionized the way that you stored data and made it accessible at scale. And then, you see that from the other providers as well. So you're seeing this shift now to, well, we can do this, and now we can do it at pennies, per gig instead of hundreds of dollars per gigabyte or thousands of dollars per gigabyte in some cases, right? And that unlocked all of this innovation. So now when you're talking about, well, Revlon, the example that Paolo just gave, when we're talking about we want business units sharing data, one of the key tenets of digital transformation is data democratization. You can't do that when you've got a bunch of disparate storage systems spread around data centers that don't have connectivity. Now you're building manual systems and physical systems to connect data assets across organization. That gets very expensive, very hard to manage at scale, whereas the cloud providers are built that way from the get-go. And so it's very easy to say, well, I'm going to expose this API. I'm going to add an API layer on top of my data assets, et cetera, that I can now build on. I can build applications that feed into my customer experience. So all of those things is why cloud matters as much as it does. And then start saying, okay, well, we've got to get there. We've got to migrate. So, and
that's why it's also super important to talk about security.
I just want to add something before.
Okay. Yep.
So Ido actually, talked about, actually everyone here talked about like the 15 years ago, which is ages in technology. And how AWS came to life and how everything. Today, a new organization, no matter from what market sector, it will be crazy not to go to cloud first. It will be crazy to build something on-prem on the data centers. I'm not talking about the heavy regulation and data privacy and stuff like that, but eventually, the cloud today is a commodity. And the fact is that the innovation is allowing that commodity to flourish and everyone to succeed. I mean, 15 years ago, what a number. It's like, really, we have moved so far. And Rocky, you were, while the introduction, you said, we are a cloud native, we are cloud first, we are doing everything in the cloud. How long have SADA been around?
SADA's been around 20 years, but started as, as this. So this is cloud first, right? They started doing Microsoft BPOS, right? They were like, hey, this is the future. We're going to go this route. And they went all in on helping customers get onto BPOS, if anybody remembers that, right? So that
2003.
There you go. Exactly.
I was watching with Microsoft, 2003, I remember.
So, but you're exactly right, Alon. It's like, hey, we were going to go cloud first. And at the time that was revolutionary, but not anymore. Right?
I think it's like, it's not a revolution, but it's a constant evolution. Look at this discussion. I mean, we are facing so many points. It's amazing.
Okay, so I want to stay with you, Alon. We talked about cloud migration. How does cloud migration affect security?
Wow. So I know that cloud makes, in a broader view, cloud makes security for organization better, because they got rid of a lot of the attack vectors and the threats, and there is someone else that dealing with the infrastructure security and the different services. The cloud is architectured and built in security functionality and mechanisms, and it's even a commercial or a business decisions from the hyperscalers, because security and privacy and continuity of services goes hand in hand. So they want to make sure that their customers are getting the best of the best of all of that offerings. Now, another thing that we see in cloud is that we have third-party solutions that allow customers and organizations that run on the cloud to use them. And there you can see two types of third-party solutions, like third-party solutions that basically mimic on-prem solutions, like a firewall for a data center. You can buy a firewall for a VPC, for the virtual private cloud. XDR, SDR, what we used to call the antivirus, you can buy it for the machine on the cloud. And there is new technologies, new security technologies, because of the new architecture. Ido mentioned the microservices, the hosting of the data. Most of us, talked about data, AI, and all of that, but eventually we have many customers that use the cloud as their workspace environment, Office 365, Google Workspace. I mean, people are living their life there. Okay. Does anyone here have Gmail? Everyone has Gmail. Guys, even in the audience, everyone, Gmail, this is the data that we own. It's ours, it's our privacy, and we don't know where it is. So there is a lot of new technologies, new security technologies that are delivered because of new architectures. And new architectures brings new threats. Users, customers, organizations should know about that. I want to share just another insight about the shared responsibility model. Mm-hmm. I think AWS presented that model, but all of the cloud vendors are using it without really saying it. It's basically they're cutting a line and saying, we're going to deal the cloud, we're going to deal with the infrastructures and all of the things that are used and developed to manage the cloud. And you, as the user of the cloud, will be responsible for everything that you install in the cloud. So there is a lot of responsibility on the user itself. I mean, cloud solves a lot of problems, but there is a lot of security work to do. And that's a sum of every technologies that I just mentioned, the new technologies, new architectures, third party that mimic on-prem, and of course, the built-in functionality. So overall, we need to do a lot of work, but it is very developed.
Thank you. Paulo, how does the market view innovation and cost reduction in terms of cloud migration?
Well, I think it's a very unique selling factor that I look at that in terms of the reduction of the total cost of ownership. And I think Ido said this in his opening answer. To me, there's like a lot of other benefits such as faster time of delivery, right? And the thing that gets less talked about is the agility and the flexibility when it comes to cloud in terms of meeting the changing market demands for organizations, be there good, be there bad, right? Because that's always in play. I say this all the time when I do my Jolera presentations. It's a Netflix world, and what's the best part about Netflix? Is because no one is obligated beyond the current month. You can cancel anytime, and that's how the market is thinking about all this stuff. And that was
competition, of course.
And competition too, because maybe Hulu has a movie you like better than Netflix or vice versa. But I think this is what's driving change, right? And we've seen it. I'm pretty sure everyone has seen it since the pandemic hit. That more organizations have been migrating their services and data over to the cloud, and they have to adapt to become more of an elastic type of environment to accommodate all these new digital workplaces and all these remote workflows. Everyone talks about the workplace, but what about the workflows that are happening also too in the marketplace? Very, very challenging.
Thank you. We have a couple questions from our audience. How can smaller companies work with cloud service providers like Microsoft, IBM, to help migrate more businesses and apps to the cloud?
This is totally yours.
I don't think that enterprise, different from a startup, they should move this, they have the same procedures, they have the same best practices. And if a startup wants to move to the cloud, first you need to choose which cloud will be better for them, and it depends on their skill set. If they have skills, for example, if they have a DevOps engineers with Amazon skills, so they should start with Amazon, for example, or it depends on their workloads. So they can have a discussion. I think every customer, every business should build their own CCOE, Cloud Center of Excellence team. One should be responsible for security, one should be responsible for FinOps, the cost, the billing, and one responsible for the cloud architecture. And then they will sit together and thinking about the plan. They should build a plan, how we are going to move to the cloud, what is our goal, and only then they can work with, let's say, after they have discussed about this and they decided to move with, let's say, Google, because they have a cheaper price, for example. So the Google Cloud team can help them. First of all, they have all the process and procedures. They have all the assessment and migration tools for the discovery phase, for the mapping phase, for the assessment phase. And actually, they can take all their, let's say, data and their workloads on premises and say, guys, those workloads will cost you, let's say, $15,000 each month. This is what we predicted, because every cloud service provider has a calculator that they can use and predict how much they are going to pay, how much the customers is going to pay in the cloud, and which security cloud native services they will need to use and implement in the cloud. And they have a bunch of security best practices. It depends on the workload, it depends the services that they want to move to the cloud, but you should start with work with a partner that will help you with this transition to move to the cloud. And it really depends where they are, if they're started or if they're in the middle, or it depends on how much complex their applications are. If they're, they have microservices or nanoservices application and they build based on the microservice architecture or nanoservices architecture, it's very easy to move. If they're using containers, they can move them easily. By the way, they can use and some other application, like for example, SharePoint, CRM, Exchange, those kind of application, Amazon and Google do not offer managed services for them. So they actually need to take those applications as it is, lift and shift them to somebody else's cloud, and then manage them as they have done on premises.
Rocky, would you like to add?
Yeah, I can add to that. I think from a smaller company perspective, and you nailed it, right? It's reach out to partners. The vendors are going to focus their efforts on their big select accounts, right? That's what they have to do, and they work with partners like SADA, like Kyndryl, to help them scale and help them meet their smaller customers' needs, right? So that's what we're here for. We are a Google first provider, so but Ido's absolutely right. Like, think about your skill set, think about your teams, and really, again, start with what your goals are as an organization, right? Are you trying to innovate in a particular area? Where are your customers? What cloud makes the most sense is going to be tied to those kind of key business questions, right? Is where do you want to go? And then pick whatever fits best. Obviously cost comes into that, but let's face it, like today, Amazon might be cheaper than Google and Google might be cheaper than Azure. Tomorrow, that'll all change, right? So the costs go up and down all the time. Each of them is innovating and driving scale that's going to help lower their costs, and then they'll lower their prices. And we've seen that. We've seen prices go up. We've seen prices go down. So that changes, but that goes then to, again, what Ido was saying, right? Which is, how do you architect your platforms and solutions? Don't just lift and shift and dump them. And in fact, someone else said that earlier too, right? If you just lift and shift it as it is, without any changes, it's actually going to cost you more. Alon, I think you were saying that, right? It ends up costing you a lot more in the long run because you're not taking advantage of that scale. So think about that as you do that as well. But your partners are your friends for sure. That's all they do is they help customers make those migrations. So thank you.
I also like what Paolo said. That's like Netflix and Hulu. You choose what you want to watch. Like there's a docuseries on Netflix that you're really into, but then there's this sitcom on Hulu, which is another thing you would like to watch, and it's kind of like choosing the best of all worlds. So before,
if I may add one thing, moving from one cloud service provider to another, it could be very expensive. So think about that. If you move to Azure, for example, and you want to move all your applications to Google Cloud, they have different types of cloud native. They maybe seems like they are, almost look the same, but they're completely different. So think about, and from day one, because if you want to go multi-cloud approach, you should work, and it's super expensive because you need to base the entire architecture on top of Kubernetes, open source, Helm charts, package management, and you need the right people with the right skill set. You need the people with container security, Kubernetes security expertise, people that know how to manage Kubernetes, how to upgrade it. So if you start, you have two choices: to use cloud native architecture approach or multi-cloud, cloud agnostic. It depends on the architecture, right? So start thinking from day one, what you want to achieve. And if you are a software company and you have multiple companies that you want to deploy your application, your solution on 3 of them, so from day one, you can go multi-cloud. But if you're a startup company and you want to build like a POC or something like that, move to a one cloud service provider and it will be good enough for you from day one. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to our next topic. I know we still have a few questions on our Q&A box, but we have to move on to our second topic. So we will answer these questions later in the discussion. Our second topic is challenges and risks. And Ido, I would like to ask you, what are the top cloud migration challenges?
There are plenty, but I will start, let's say the top 5 or the top 3, let's say how much we can cover in 5 minutes or 6 minutes. but security is always on the top, right? Security is the single most important thing when we migrate our applications to the public cloud. And our applications are vulnerable when we move them to the cloud. So we need to have the right security component in place and implement the right security based on Amazon cloud security strategy, cloud security best practice. The same thing with Microsoft Azure. You have a lot of security best practices, so you should work accordingly. And Alon mentioned R&R, roles and responsibilities. You know, most companies, enterprises think that if they will move their applications to the cloud, you know, they are secure by default. And they are mistaken. You know, the cloud service providers should be responsible for the underlying infrastructure, as Alon mentioned, and the customer responsible for the operation system to the application layer. So you need to have every single layer. You need security for every single layer, for the applications, from the middleware. You need to have the right security, cloud native security tools and services. So you need to use web application firewall and encryption to your database and encrypt your applications. So you need to remember to work according to the best practices and in order to improve your cloud security posture, cloud security environment. And the second thing, you know, 67% from the CFOs concerned about the cloud spending. So this is a huge challenge. Because they're afraid, because their billings start to increase when they move to the cloud. So they need to control it. So I think the first people that you, let's say, role that you should hire is the FinOps engineer. You should make someone that will take responsibility just for that, to analyze and monitor the cost and follow the cloud service provider or the hyperscaler best practices in terms of cost management, how you're going to reduce your cloud cost. You can use pod instances for your development environment, for your QA environment, or you should identify cloud services or resources that you don't need and shut down or stop them. For example, if it would be RDS, for example, or any kind of database, you can stop them if you don't need to use them, or shut down dev environment or QA environment if you don't use them on the weekends. So those kind of best practices you can use. And at the same time, if you go multi-cloud, so it's really hard to control the billing, right? Because you need to go and control it on Amazon, on Azure, and Google Cloud at the same time. And the FinOps engineers, unfortunately, they do not have those expertise to go multi-cloud and to control everything. So what you can do, you should have cloud cost management tool like Cloud Health, CloudWise, Cloudability, those kind of tools in order to control, also for prediction, to know how much you're going to pay next month or next quarter, and to get notification if some developer by mistake or accidentally started fire up a new service like Cosmos DB is very expensive service, or BigQuery, for example. The FinOps engineers will get, or the DevOps engineers, they will get notification immediately, and they can stop that immediately. And they will not be surprised after a month, wow, $15,000, what we are going to do, right? So you need to take care of it as well. And I think every customer should have a cloud migration strategy and build it, because cloud migration strategy can be very complex. And before you move to the cloud, you need to think about it. And I will give you something like a use case. We had a telco customers, they tried to move 100 applications to the cloud on the weekends. And the CFO didn't know about it, but after a month, they got huge billing. And the CFO told them immediately, move them back, immediately. And the person that was in charge got fired. So don't go crazy. Think about what you are doing and plan. And if you don't have the budget, don't do crazy stuff. You should think about the cost, think about security. And another use case that I always mention to my colleagues, one customer wanted to move the application. They tried to move it on the weekend. large application. It was legacy application. And they said, I can convert this application to Kubernetes, to EKS, and I can run it on Kubernetes. So they have done this, but they forgot that they had public IP, and that this application were, they had thousands of vulnerabilities because they didn't upgrade the PHP framework. So, and the security teams got notification about it, and it was, crazy. So don't, plan everything ahead and don't do crazy stuff, believe me. I think data security and compliance, performance, very, very critical, very important, and those are challenges in the cloud. And I think the last one, because there are plenty, but I will close with the last one, lack of expertise. It's really rare to find the right people with the right skill sets, specifically in the cloud, right? Because if you find someone, and you need someone that will with Amazon, you find someone, an architect with Azure. So it takes time to minimize the gaps. And if you need the DevOps engineers to build your CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and they have experience with Jenkins, and now you use cloud native CI/CD services like code build, code pipeline, or Azure DevOps, for example. So they need to learn, and it will take time to minimize the knowledge gap. So make sure that you hire the right team and find the right partner to help you with those kind of challenges. Thank you.
And don't do anything crazy. That's
exactly
in general. Thank you. And thank you, Amar, for answering all the questions in the Q&A box. Now, Rocky, would you like to add to that? What is the largest area of risk during and after migration? What are some of the most common missteps in migrating?
Yeah. So I think again, you nailed it, right? There's a number of things to think about relative to migration. SADA we have two founding members of the FinOps Foundation, right? And part of the reason for that is those folks saw early on that as you do these migrations, you can get into a lot of trouble. And that kind of ties into the whole security story as well, right? If you're not managing cost, you can get into trouble with not just the cost elements of that, but then all this new infrastructure that now is a threat vector for your organization. So I think the challenges of cloud migration, one is not understanding all of the things that you're doing or turning on. So that can be, that's an easy challenge to foresee, but not an easy one necessarily to solve, right? Because it takes the time to go through and do that. And I think that's the importance of embracing. So how do you mitigate that? Well, you mitigate it by embracing the cloud platforms and understanding the threat vectors of that particular service, and building solutions in, and Alon was mentioning this earlier, right? We can be more secure now because we don't have to just put something at the edge and hope for the best after the fact. And I think that's another thing that we do wrong when we do these migrations is we think, I'll just take what I had. And this has been said a couple of times already today. Like if I just take what I have and drop it in the cloud, can I do that? Yes, I can do that. Is that the right thing to do? No, not necessarily. So taking that approach of let's have a plan in place. Let's leverage a partner and their experience in doing these migrations, right? This is something that comes up in our sales cycles all the time, but why should we use you guys for this? Well, we've done this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, right? So Ido's in the same boat. I know some of the other folks have probably been through this. You've been through cloud migration 100 times. You know what to expect. As an organization, you're going to do it once, maybe twice, right? And so having that expertise to help you through that process, and then being able to lean on somebody who's done it before, and then can bring in those other experts to help along the way. Security, is one of the only industries to have a negative unemployment rate, right? Which means you're going to migrate. Ido was talking about, hire the right people to help you with your migration. That's going to be really hard to do for a lot of organizations. One, they're expensive, right? So yeah, you do need to do that. You need to upskill your people, but you also need to recognize that there's a very small supply of folks that have done this before. So leverage your partners to help you through that. And then also leverage those partners to help your teams skill up as well. So.
Thank you, Rocky. Paulo, there are misconceptions about the cloud when it comes to security. I want to ask you, how does the market attempt to change the narrative that cloud makes everything secure?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to talk about security, but I have to say I agree with Ido 100%. I think planning and the lack of expertise that's out there in the marketplace is really, really critical. And the other thing I would add to that is maybe doing some sort of testing to see if these workloads should be moved over or not, right? I think that's also very key. But going back to the topic of security, the problem I have is that I think it's just too broad, right? I think most people like trust it implicitly, and I think that's where the misconception is, right? And it's brought on by this consumer acceptance and convenience of the cloud. So, for example, my wife and I, we like to go to Starbucks and have coffee. I'm sure lots of people love to go to Starbucks and have coffee. And what is the first thing that my wife does? She connects to the free Wi-Fi at Starbucks, and I don't, right? And the reason why she does is because, you know, she really doesn't care about like anything she does on there, right? Ever. And I attempt to chit chat. But would I actually use the Starbucks Wi-Fi to send over important data? I would not do that, right? And because I think that's the misconception there. I think, you know, they think, well, it's totally safe, but it's not. You can get easily hacked. In fact, you know, a lot of the times when you do go to Starbucks and you try to connect, you see two Starbucks Wi-Fi's there. Why is that? Oh, one of them is rogue. One is probably a man-in-the-middle attack or an evil twin attack. So you should be very cognizant of that. So what I think we should try and do is try to educate the marketplace that you need a layered approach to security, not just one thing, not just bring it all over the cloud and it's all there. Let's have a layered approach, right? So you add these extra layers of protection, and one of them is what we never ever talk about is that extra human layer of protection. People actually looking at these things. I think Rocky, you said a cyber incident center where you actually have people looking at all these live data, the log data, and everything else like that. I think that's equally important. I think it'll definitely get a lot tougher for threat actors and the hacker communities if we all do this.
Paolo, thank you. Amar, would you like to add to that?
I was going to add to that, but I noticed that there is a section on solutions and approaches, which we are going to discuss, right? So that the point I was going to make probably belongs to that section, because that Starbucks example is very good by Paolo that you mentioned. But I'll tell you more in that section about some of the solutions that we can look to tackle those challenges.
So I have another question for you.
Okay.
What are the implications of moving to the cloud on security and identity? Do we need a different mindset? And if we do, why do we need a different?
Well, I think if you think about it, you know, we're doing a lot in the cloud. Migration is one thing, but at the end of the day, who are you? The customers you are serving, where are they computing and what they're doing? The partners you are working with, what are they doing? Are they, you know, majority of them are on cloud? You know, we talked about some of the ERP, some of the enterprise applications. Most of them are managed these days. There's a lot of things that are happening on the cloud already, whether you like it or not, right? This has happened. So you can't survive with having an approach of on-premise security on the cloud. You can't have a castle with a very rigid perimeter wall around it on the cloud. It's almost like the egg analogy. When a boiled egg, when you crack one piece of that wall, you're then all the way left, right, up, down, you're everywhere inside the perimeter wall. So you've got to have a completely different approach and different mindset when you move to the cloud. You've got a much bigger attack surface, right, on the cloud. So you've got to think about how can you protect these? How can you protect the assets, applications, the data that you have on the cloud? And the key to that is something that we did when I was at Google, which I used to talk a lot about and did a lot of work with, is something called zero trust security, right? So, you know, the example that we were talking about before that Paolo was talking about in Starbucks and what have you, you should be able to use Starbucks. Your wife's quite right, actually. She should be able to get on there and use that Starbucks. But the responsibility then is on the organizations, enterprises that are building applications in the cloud to have a zero trust security model, so that you wrap security around every request that comes in into your platform or into your environment. You wrap security around your users. You wrap security around your devices. You wrap security around your networking, right? So you're wrapping security around all of these places. And fundamentally, that is the key way that you're going to get, you're going to tackle some of these challenges that you're going to have with moving to cloud. And there's a number of different solutions.
That's what I meant by a layered approach. That's what I meant by a layered approach.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have that layered approach in there, and there's a number of different other solutions you can have, but that is a starting point is getting that philosophy and that mindset right in terms of when you're moving there. What does this mean to you as an organization?
Guys, I just want to make sure we are not encouraging people to get on free Wi-Fi's.
No, don't do that. No.
Alon, you must be part of a security team.
Absolutely, but we want to make sure that organizations and enterprises out there think about this, right, and how to allow adoption of your services to be easily done, because it's a competitive advantage out there these days. So these things are competitive advantage, right? There's a reason why you would go to a Starbucks or somewhere in some of these places. One of the reasons is that you can get online and do some work, maybe, right? So these hurdles around these old methods of doing security, where you need to go into a VPN, you need a token with you, which you're not going to find. I don't know where it is. You're going to probably have a broken connection. These things are outdated things. You need to think about how you do this in the cloud. You need a different approach to this. So yeah, this is my take on it in terms of what I feel more on in terms of responding to your question.
And it's kind of funny because I don't remember which one of you said that. Look at where we were 15 years ago, and now think about where we'll be in 15 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole notion of ubiquitous computing, right? So you probably all come across this, where I mean, and the security challenge needs to be solved to be able to get to those type of visionary things that we talk about, and it will get solved. It just takes a bit of time to get there and what have you, but it needs to be solved. But yeah, that's what I would say.
thank you, Rocky. Due to the widespread use of cloud services, there are also more and more threat vectors. I think Ido said something about it. What are some of the major changes companies will need to make?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised we haven't talked about this yet, but automation. Automation is a major change that we need to be bringing into our security strategy, because cloud does enable us to scale. And the reality is we want our users, our developers to use that, right? We want them to be innovating and leveraging the cloud platforms and services and SaaS offerings to build new things that make our customers' experience better, that bring more value out of the data assets that we have. Well, go do that, and suddenly there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new services and systems online. And so we need to use automation to help us, one, identify those new workloads, but two, identify all the additional security threats and vectors that are now online. And then three, respond to those by, putting in our policies, enforcing our policies, enforcing them at scale across providers. So I think automation is going to be one of those key things we're going to have to leverage. And then it was Nir Zuck. I heard an interview from him the other day. He's the co-founder of Palo Alto. And he was talking about how AI is going to become an essential component of security at scale as well, because one, bad actors are using AI. They're going to start using it more and more to attack us on those new vectors that we're exposing when we do leverage those services, which means we're going to need to be able to respond at the same rate. And we can't do that as humans, right? So SOC is important, of course. Monitoring, looking and alerting is important. I think there was even a question around monitoring and alerting. Cloud enables us to turn all that on at multiple new layers that we didn't have before. All that is bonus material for us as we leverage cloud. But we were going to have to leverage automation then to respond to these new threat vectors. Tied to that is artificial intelligence, right? We need something that can move as fast as a computer at an anonymous or a strange behavior and bring it to our attention at the very least, but hopefully also start mitigating it. So that I think is going to be one of the keys for success going forward in security.
And Alon, what about data privacy and data security?
So actually, I think we should examine this question from the consumer perspective, from the end customer perspective, because no matter what is the organization, either you're using the cloud collaboration services like Google Workspace or Office 365, or you are using a SaaS to manage data or whatever, eventually, in many ways, and we in the security realms like to say it a lot, cloud is a nice name for someone else's computer. And when you use the cloud, you put your data on someone else's computer. Now, when you say it like this, it doesn't make any sense. You will never do it. You will never do it. I mean, think about everyone has their MacBooks, their workstations, whatever. You would never take your data and put it on someone else's computer. And this is what we're doing in the cloud, all of us. I gave the Gmail example, about 10 minutes ago or something. But we are doing it without even thinking about it. And the fact is that there are many security mechanisms to keep your data private and safe and secure, and hyperscalers, the service providers.
Like client-side encryption.
I actually want to talk about this in 1 minute. They are very minded about data privacy and data security. In many cases, not for the reason of the data privacy and security, but for the reputation and for the continuity of the service. But still, we as an end customers are enjoying that. So I think cloud introduces a new area where data privacy and data security is constantly being challenged. And when you move to the cloud, all you have is data. That's it. Nobody cares about the machines. Nobody cares about the applications, the BCP. Everything is solved. Data, there is a saying, data is the new currency. And when you use the cloud, it's your only currency. So end customers, every one of us should really care about their data privacy and data security. And that's a huge threat. I mean, when you get hacked in the cloud, it is either for money, Bitcoin, or for your data. Of course, you have the denial of service and everything, but eventually it falls into money or data, and they worth the same. Actually, data is much more pricier today. From the end customer perspective, everyone lives in the cloud. WhatsApp is in the cloud. Everything is in the cloud today. We don't think about it because that's the way we react all the time. And you can see a lot of mechanisms being deployed, like end-to-end encryption and client-side encryption, as you just mentioned. The fact that an owner can bring his own keys and make sure that the cloud is doing all the encryption, or the logic is doing all the encryption, but you hold the keys, so everything is hidden. Google has it, Microsoft has it, wonderful technologies. And it's a funny thing about this technology, that they basically telling you, look, we know that we hold your data. We understand that you don't know where it is, how it is being handled, and we understand that you don't trust us. And even if you trust us, you have objective problems like data residency and such. And we will give you the possibility to encrypt the data. Okay, you will give us the keys. We will never see the data. We will have nothing to do with it. Client-side encryption, for example. Now, the fact is that there are huge benefits because no one can see your data, not the cloud provider, not the governments, hackers, whatever. But you own the problem now because the target will be the keys. The target will be you, the organization, and it is very easy, or let's say relatively more easy, to steal keys from an on-prem data center that a customer is managing than from the cloud. So again, it's a two-way sword, and data privacy is something that we should care about a lot. A cloud is just someone else's computer. Remember that. That's a fundamental saying.
Thank you. Amar. Yeah, you raised your hand.
Yeah, sure. Alan makes a very, very good point there about data, and I think you hit home there in terms of the value of this. But I think more needs to be done. But I think already there's a lot being done within the cloud providers that are already there. I mean, for example, I can give you an example. I worked on a very big project when I was with Google with a large financial organization, where it took me about 3 months just to get close to the data, not even access it, but even talk about getting hold of the data that we needed. But we went through a lot of work to be able to get to that level of security that was required to get hold of the data and to process it and to do what we need to do to it. So you can do it. I don't think there's any challenges or any issues with doing it. I think it's really one of the key challenges I found in that space was that you've got to educate and raise awareness of how to do security of data when you are moving data from one place to another place. Because a lot of the time, what you're looking to do is measured against an old way of doing computing, an on-premise legacy way of doing computing, where fundamentally a lot of the risk of what you're trying to protect against doesn't exist in the new way of doing things, or is mitigated by doing other things. So this is why it's really, really important to actually educate, bring up to speed your standard in where you are at the moment to get to the target destination when you get there. Because what you'll end up doing otherwise is you'll end up having people who are making decisions based on a target platform, which they do not know full capabilities of. And this is where you need specialist partners like what we have on the panel, for example, where they can help you, support you with this, where you need organizations such as yourself in terms of security side of things to help you do this. Because if you leave it to where it is, and I know, in those organizations, there's a lot of really long people who've served there for a long time in the industry. And I think that's fundamentally, that's something that we need to be doing. And I also I accept that, there needs to be more done in terms of regulatory and governance and those things. But at the same time, there's a lot of work that we can do to increase the level of education and literacy. And there's a lot that can be done to address a lot of those mitigations and concerns that you mentioned about the security of data.
Rocky, yeah.
Yeah, I think, one of the things to keep in mind with cloud, and I think, to Alan's point, like it is someone else's computer. The benefit of cloud from a security perspective, though, is it's someone else's computer who spends $1 billion a year on security, right? So that shared trust model is real, right? You're still responsible for your data, but they've put a lot of work into building systems and controls that you can leverage, right? So again, don't just say, oh, they got it and walk away and get on this public Starbucks Wi-Fi, right? But they're making massive investments that we can't make as organizations, right? There probably isn't a single customer on this call right now who spends $1 billion on security. And so they have engineering resources, they've got platform integrations, et cetera, that help make that accessible to us. There's built-in protections there, but then also new things we can do to secure the data. And this is kind of the second thing I wanted to hit on is zero trust. We think about typically in the context of the user, but we need to expand our thinking around zero trust to the broader ecosystem that we that we have inside our environments, the data, the services, the Kubernetes containers, the individual pods, like all that stuff. Now we need to be thinking, this pod should never trust that pod. This database should never trust that database, and so on and so forth across our environments. So if we leverage the capabilities that are built into the cloud and the investments these providers make, we can be more secure. But we've got to leverage those things to really get to that true zero trust model.
Thank you, Rocky. And now we're moving on to our last topic, topic number 3, solutions and approaches. And I would like to start with you, Ido. What are the most common cloud migration strategies?
Okay, so because we don't have much time, I will try to do it very fast. So I think we have 6 cloud migration strategies, but the most common of them are lift and shift. It's called also rehost. We take virtual machine, let's say your VMware from your VMware environment, Hyper-V environment, single server with applications. We move them as it is to Google Cloud, Amazon, or Microsoft Azure. We don't change anything in the architecture, right? So this is replatforming. It's another cloud migration strategy, and it's involved modifying your legacy system, but without changing anything in your core architecture. What I mean by that, it's like, I will give you an example. It's like if you have database, SQL Server, and now you move to RDS or manage SQL Server, SQL as a service, or you have Kubernetes, now you need to move to the cloud and you use EKS, AKS, or GKE, or OpenShift on Amazon Web Services. You don't change anything in your core applications, but you use cloud native service. And when people talk about refactoring, it's another common. When people talk about refactoring specifically, they talk about refactor monolith to microservices. They have enterprises build large applications they developed 15, 20 years ago, and they still stuck with it, with those large applications. And now they want to move them to the cloud, but unfortunately, they're not cloud ready. It doesn't make sense to move them. You can move those large applications to Amazon, to Google, or to the large hyperscalers, but it doesn't make sense. First, you will pay a lot of money, and second, you don't use cloud native technology. So you should start breaking those huge monolith to microservices or build them with cloud native approach. So I think you have also rebuild, retire, replace, retain. You have multiple cloud strategy, migration strategy, but the most common is lift and shift to rehost and replatform. And refactoring, of course.
Thank you, Amar. Could you elaborate on cloud migration and zero trust?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think one of the reasons, I mean, the whole reason behind this is, like I said, everything is happening in the cloud as a business anyway. You know, you don't really have a choice. The people that you have, the internal users you have, they have a very high expectation in terms of the systems that you provide to them and what they're doing. So there is a level of increased expectation there. The usage of these services also is expanding massively. So, you know, you've got to find a way to find a system or a solution which is actually going to address those problems for you. And this is where zero trust comes in, right? This is what we were talking about before with Paolo, is around the kind of zero trust and the layered approach of security that Paolo mentioned before. And, you know, so we need to provide that capability so that you can enable an easier approach or adoption of your services. And there are a number of different solutions and approaches to address that. For example, you know, rather than having VPN devices and physical kind of keys, what you want to do is have dual factor authentication, right? You want to have those the kind of physical keys instead of using passwords only, right? Where you use biometrics, right? As a way of getting into access something. You use context-aware access for your devices, for your applications, for your networking, for where you are coming from. You need a more cloud native identity system, right? Which not only recognizes you where you are on premise, but also tracks how and what you access as you go online into the cloud platform. You need to have that whole kind of integration between your enterprise applications, your databases, your networking, your compute, your VMs, your data you have, all lined up with best practices within adopting a zero trust security model. So a lot of these capabilities are there to provide you, help you adopt that zero trust security model, which is where I think we need to be if we are going to, really challenge or really address this solution of moving things in the cloud. So, I mean, I'll give you an example from a Google perspective. I remember Google wrote a white paper where this was a challenge within Google itself. So when, we wanted to give users access to be able to work remotely and to be able to do what they needed to do, so they couldn't do it with the way this existing method of having VPN access and license keys and tokens and what have you. So Google adopted a pure zero trust security model, which allowed people to do what they needed to do. And believe it or not, Google has never been hacked. I mean, this is I touch wood. This used to be my pitch at the time when I was there, is that it was never hacked, and that's because we had physical keys. Every single person has a physical key, which you use to access your devices. Then we have a complete zero trust security model. And so that's my experience in terms of how you go about changing. Sorry about my, I got disrupted a little bit in my train of thought because my kids are running around requiring my assistance for something. I don't know why. It could be something to do with what they're doing elsewhere.
Thank you.
Google is
Paulo.
not that we know of.
What's that, Alon?
Yeah. Not that we know of. Yes. Let's
Not
just
that
say
we
yeah.
know of. Google is not.
Well, actually, a funny story on that is, Alon, is that actually Google used to do bounty, right, for people to hack the system, right? So you get paid if you can break in and actually get in. So that's another practice that should be looked at, actually, which is actually done quite a lot in the well, when I was there anyway in Google. That was actually
that's right. That's ethical hacking, penetration testing, vulnerability scans, and everything like that.
Yeah,
I think that's equally important to like that layered approach that I was talking about. I know, Moran, you have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, well, actually, my next question is for you. How can we accelerate cloud migration?
How can we accelerate cloud migration? Well, I think it's already there. I think the demand, the digital transformation demand is there. The people remote working is there. The remote workflows too, I think will also be a big factor to accelerate that. But I think, when you look at, if you're an entrepreneur and you run an organization, and first of all, if you are one of those people, you should not be contemplating this. You should be thinking about what your core competency is and pass that burden on to someone like a managed service provider who has that expertise level, who can actually assist you better than trying to do it yourself. That would be my number one advice to that person. I know there was a small business that asked that question, but I think inevitably you're going to be looking at the things like, why am I waiting? Why am I waiting? Why don't I want the agility and the flexibility? Why don't I want the extra resources and demands of the computing, the reduction in cost, simplified IT, everything as a service, all these cloud scalability, all these things that are benefits. Why do I not want them? I think that'd be the ultimate question on that.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we only have 5 more minutes until we have to say goodbye. So I want to ask, the entire panel, do you have any tips on how to ensure cloud migration is secure?
I can take this question. I will try to do it in 1 minute, I hope. Yeah. So first of all, use defense in depth. Try to protect every single layer. And this is very important. Middleware database operation system, you should encrypt everything in transit and in rest. Everything should be secured by default, by the way. And it's very important to implement all the security control, to have IAM, identity access management. You should monitor the environment every day. Have cloud security center of excellence, because most enterprise, 92% of enterprise companies use multi-cloud environment. So it's really hard to control each environment on each cloud, public cloud, and control the security. So you should have security visibility. This is why you should have security cloud center of excellence. And if you have vulnerabilities, or if you release a new feature, a new app, new service, you should get notification immediately after you migrate or after you develop an applications. So these days, you must have cloud security of excellence. This is really important. Encrypt the data, monitor the data, have backups every day, and secure them and encrypt those backups. If an attacker attack your system, attack your applications, you should immediately be able to recover your backups immediately. And you need to imagine that your entire application goes down because of cybersecurity, because of DDoS attacks. This is where you need to build a plan, how you are going to recover ASAP as soon as possible. And the second thing is work with partners, with Amazon, Google Cloud, everyone has a partner. So work with a partner that have those experience and work according to security best practices. All the largest hyperscalers, they build security best practices just for that. Okay, so 2 minutes.
Thank you. Rocky?
Yeah, just to add to that, just finish with the comment that every partner, every platform, every major provider has best practices. We have what we call a secure cloud foundation. I'm sure every other partner does as well. Most of that's based on the best practices from those cloud providers. And where we've kind of added on to that is because we're a cloud native company, we do everything by code. And so what we're trying to help our customers do when we do a cloud foundation is not just analyze all those best practices and potential threats, but shift security left, right? We talk about shifting left. And the way you do that is by integrating security best practice into the code that actually deploys the environments that you operate on top of. And so starting with a secure foundation is the key to success there. Instead of deploying, this is how most folks tend to approach it. And your question was, how do we do this during migration? Start with a secure foundation, because if you start with a secure foundation, it's much easier, one, to skill up and get used to operating that model, but it's also less effort to go than it is to go backwards and say, okay, we deployed all this stuff. Now we got to go try to harden it. That takes a lot more time than starting off on a solid foundation. So if you can, definitely start there. Sometimes you can't, but I get that. But if you're asking for what should we do, this is what you should do, right? Start with the cloud foundation that's code driven, that's automated, and then it's built to scale and has security baked in up front.
Alon, you opened the discussion, so we have to wrap it up, and you raised your hand, so go ahead.
I think that in every situation, migration, cloud native, moving to the cloud, on-prem, just about anywhere, you should make sure that you have a good user awareness, because eventually all the security, we talked about different security mechanisms. We talked about, automation, which is great point. We talk about third parties, cloud native environments, security, everything, but the user basically destroys everything just by clicking on something. And they're not doing that because
Amar, yeah.
I've got to go, guys. I've got to pick up little ones, so I'm really sorry. I've got to go. I'm bang on time, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys very soon. You have all the details if you need me. I'm around. I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so long. So it's first of all the user awareness, and then it's the data safety and data privacy, and I'm really cautious about this point. There is a price for convenience and collaboration, and the cloud providers are offering us the way to do, bring your own key, client-side encryption, all of that areas. I think everyone should consider that end-to-end encryption. Everyone should consider that. It has huge benefits. It should be done right. And once you do it, there are new attack vectors and threats that needs to be mitigated. So be cautious about that as well. Other than that, what everyone said, Paolo, Rocky, Ido, Amar, that just left us, he got off the cloud. Everyone is right. I mean, there is a lot of data and professional people in the world. Use them, plan, do it right, and make sure that you keep your data safe.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers, Alon Saban, Ido Vapner, Rocky Giglio, Paolo Del Nubleto, and Amar Hussein. We look forward to hosting many more discussions like these in the future. To stay up to date on upcoming webinars, follow Hub Security on LinkedIn. Thank you everyone so much. See you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
So
you.
long.
Take care.
Good night.